Guys, welcome. I'm so excited you could be here for the inaugural session of the Poona Ford fan club's meeting. I have punch and cookies down the hall. I don't know why Aaron's here. I have no idea why he's here. But we're going to start with Poona Ford's kindergarten. We're going to work our way up through elementary school, talk a little bit about middle school, and then we'll get into everything else. We're really excited. We're going to talk about some of the news and some of the signings. We have one of our favorite guests on, Joe Marino, going to be joining us to talk about this draft class and everything else that's been going on. But first, our guys at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my contractually obligated partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, what are your thoughts on Poona Ford?
I'm a mix of, as soon as the news broke, I was just like everyone else, and I was excited for you, but I was also so annoyed that I had to be here because I know how insufferable you were going to be, and you should be. Because if I was right, it would be an insufferable couple of weeks for you. So I'm here to be your partner in it and be supportive of it. But I'm happy for you. The receipts are plentiful. You got your guy, and it's something that makes sense. I can't wait to talk to Joe about it. I listened to Joe earlier today, just like I do every day. So excited we finally got him lined up here to come on. And what a perfect time to have Joe on with all these additions that we get to talk about here since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, without further ado, oftentimes you guys know Aaron and I will kind of go through some of the news that's going on, but there's no sense doing that without our friend Joe Marino. So without further ado, for any of you who are not currently listening to Locked On Bills or Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, you absolutely should be. And that is because Joe Marino is there bringing it to you every single day. Joe, how are we doing?
I'm good, man. I'm just thankful to be included in the Poona Ford monologue. I was interested in the kindergarten stuff. I really wanted to see what you had lined up. So feel free, Greg, if you want to talk about, I'll get out of the way and listen to the kindergarten report.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into it. Obviously, 5'11", 310 pounds is the ideal male form.
How do you get there? That's what I want to know. With the
80-inch wingspan.
6'8". Just 6'8" wingspan.
It's unbelievable.
That's so weird.
It's a weird shape.
And then we were talking pre-show. Like, obviously, I am ecstatic. He was one of my targets. So, honestly, it come together well. Latavius Murray was our recommendation, our like Goldilocks. Yeah. Like, hey, we need a big bodied back. And then when we said Damian Harris, I kind of, got off that train and like, all right, I guess this is our backfield. That's cool. So just adding on these other pieces have been really interesting. But, Poona Ford in that kind of addition where we saw what happened every time Daquan Jones came off the field. We saw the games where Daquan Jones had to play like 70% plus snaps, like 4 or 5 different games. And now, hell, you're telling me that those two can just rotate every other series and we have one of them on the field fresh every single snap of the game and both of them in goal line and obvious short yardage rundowns. Joe, I thought you talked about it well. Again, everybody make sure you're checking out Locked On Bills. We'll have it in the show description here. You talked about that motor, that engine, seeing him at the, all-star games before he's coming into the NFL and that weird dimension size, he didn't get drafted, getting into that mode. What excites you about having a guy like that on the team?
Oh man, there's a lot, starting with my concern with the defensive line. I didn't think it was good enough. Oliver and Jones, I think that's a good starting pair, but I thought Tim Settle was disappointing in his first season. And then Jordan Phillips, we all love Jordan Phillips when he's healthy, but you got a 3-year history now where it's his hamstring and then the hamstring last year in addition to the shoulder. And I'm like, man, like what's going to happen here? How many snaps am I going to have to watch of Ilianku and Braden Bryan again, right? And I think this really eases that. It gets them tougher. I think more stout up the middle of the defense. And especially with the transition that's going to happen at linebacker, stylistically, how they want to play that position. We got some great clues from Brandon Beane during the Chris Long interview. And I think you needed to have some more mass and size up front. And he's just such a lovable player. I think, going back to 2018, he was like the darling of the football community, right? The Big 12 defensive lineman of the year, goes to Shrine, kicks ass. He goes to the Senior Bowl, kicks ass. And he just doesn't get drafted. And everyone's just rooting for this guy. And then he makes the team, right? And year 2, he's a starter. He's a 3-year starter after that. And you're like, okay, yeah, we knew that this guy could play. And it's everything about him. In addition to what he brings to the table, it's that motor, man. This guy chases everything. You will never question his effort on the field. And I don't know, it's just such a likable piece. And I'm super thrilled that he's on the Buffalo Bills.
Sort of, talking about this room as a whole, Ed Oliver coming into a contract year, obviously Bills Mafia up and down on Ed Oliver a little bit. I think he's a bit of a more disruptive player than people give him credit for, but last year is about 50% snap rate. What does this move do where Poona can do the one tech? He can play 3 tech. He has that sort of big body if they're going to go up against the Cincinnati that wants to run it down their throat. Jordan Phillips coming back into this defense. I think this defense played really well when you had DaQuan Jones and Jordan Phillips playing at a high level. What does this mean for Ed Oliver coming forward this year, being really the last of the remaining undersized guys for that position with those linebackers behind him, sort of this overall philosophy change we're seeing with the defense? Where's Ed fit into that this year going forward, knowing that he's probably not part of your plans for the real future, right?
Well, I still think that he is that unique penetration style player that's not like anything else that they have. And so I think Ed's going to be a starter, and I think he'll play over half the snaps. But I think this just gives the Bills a little bit more if they want to go with some heavier sets and really plug up the A gaps with Jones and Poona, right? We call him Ford. It feels weird saying Ford. Poona, I guess we're calling
I want to
Poona.
find out, like, if I buy a jersey, can I have it say Poona across the back?
I
Like,
believe
if
you go to NFL.com and pay $130, they'll put whatever you want on the back of that jersey. So
there's probably some guy around the stadium on Sundays that will
be there for you. Yeah, it'll be there. I don't know that this signals much for Ed as it does more relief for DaQuan Jones. And we love DaQuan, but he's getting into his 30s, right? Wanting him to be fresh. And I think you learn a lot of lessons based on what happens down the stretch. And that DaQuan Jones injury really showed up. We knew he wasn't out there, and you want to hedge against that. Just like, the Chiefs, when they lost their tackles, right? They said, okay, we're going scorched earth. We're going to get this fixed. And that's just what you do when something that could be that consequential in an elimination game.
And I think, obviously, pivoting here with Latavius Murray, I think it's a similar idea where I kind of like that a lot of the additions have been these, whatever you want to call it. Greg Boris really called the nibbles around the edges. And it's just finding all these different spots where, hey, is Deontay Hardy some game-breaking talent? No, but it's an upgrade over Isaiah McKenzie. Is Trent Sherfield now some, big-time outside receiver or special teams game changer? No, but it's an upgrade over Jake Kumaro. Is Connor McGovern like an all-pro guard? Well, no, but it's an upgrade over Roger Saffold. And you just keep checking off those different boxes, and we knew what we lacked in the run game last year. And now you talk about a running back room. I can't, without having a superstar player, I can't ask for a better complementary skill set than James Cook, Nyheim Hines, Damian Harris, and now Latavius Murray. It's just a really nice overall group where whatever the game plan might be, whatever the situation calls for, you have a different card you can play that makes sense. I really like how that came together. And I will say his contract was it was $650,000 guaranteed, which I wasn't sure if we were going to see. I was actually looking, would it match the Duke Johnson number last year, which was kind of like, hey, here's enough money that if you don't make the team, you won't be unhappy to sit on practice squad, which I want to whisper that the exact amount of money they gave AJ Klein. So tuck that one away. They gave Latavius Murray, and then comments from Brandon Beane, he's going to be on this roster. I'll be surprised if he's not on this roster.
They typically roster 4. Yeah. I mean, with Gilliam, it's been Tywan Jones and 3 other running backs. And now, have we come to terms with Tywan Jones not being back? I think he can be the RB4. It's just what's interesting about the makeup of the room is none of them play special teams, right? I mean, Nyheim Hines is a returner, but Harris and
throw in
Murray.
We got an extra +1 now from receiver, where before it would be with now Shorter
McKenzie
and
was pretty
Sherfield.
useless.
Well, if you count
Sherfield,
Hardy,
too.
just swapping that in as a
Sherfield.
returner, having both Sherfield and Shorter as
Good point.
coverage guys, maybe that like our number of coverage unit special teams guys between running back plus receiver is still the same amount.
Sure.
Good point.
So I think maybe
And every
that
linebacker
enough.
is a special teams guy.
Well, everybody, we still need the same amount of DBs and linebackers,
Sure.
and even the
Yeah.
Gilliams and the Titan if Quentin Morris makes it. But that I think we went an extra one, adding Shorter for whoever you want to count him as whoever he was last year instead of Crowder, instead of the extra veteran or Hodgins who wasn't a special teams contributor. Losing Taiwan, you at least netted out there.
Can we just not see Jordan Poyer doing special teams
Wait, God, please
stuff anymore ever again?
Please, let's not do that.
We're beyond that, hopefully. I kind of pivoting off of something Greg was saying there, Joe, and I had to get this topic in here while we had you on here. He was talking about checking boxes at different positions for the Buffalo Bills coming sort of out of this offseason where they were able to get acquisitions in this building. Geez, it's like I've been asking for the interior offensive line help. Beane probably overdid himself a little bit in the interior offensive line. The only red flag and sort of positionally that I see wasn't another box check was the right tackle position. And I know that you and we were lockstep Dawson Knox a couple years ago. And early in this offseason, you alluded to Spencer Brown being sort of that for you again this year, where it's a raw prospect that had a little bit of a bumpy start here. And he's a bit behind where fans want that development to be. But you've seen what Brandon Beane clearly has seen in that there's enough there for you to feel good about this prospect. I'm not there. I was there with you, Dawson Knox. I'm not there. Can you be the one here? I've listened to your pods. You haven't talked me into this one yet.
Yeah.
Can you get me off of being super worried about this being the real red flag on the offense for me right now?
I don't think I talked a lot of people into Dawson Knox either. So,
nah.
Let me say this first before I get into what I had prepared to say about that. Maybe we need to be thinking a little bit more about Ryan Bates as your right tackle hedge. And something that I can't shake is Sal Capaccio on, I don't know, the radio. I don't remember what I was listening to when the Bills were it was the Milano, Darrell Williams, whoever else was important that offseason. And they were talking about losing these players. I think Feliciano, I don't know. And they were talking about Darrell Williams leaving, and Sal said, don't dismiss Ryan Bates as an option at right tackle. The Bills really like him. And obviously we know he kind of found a home on the interior, more of as a left guard center combo type player, obviously right guard last year. They drafted Osiris Torrence in the second round, and you don't do that. He's a guard only. You don't do that if you don't have a plan to play him. And Bates is under contract for 3 more seasons. I think there's a chance that if it really doesn't work with Spencer Brown at right tackle, that's your hedge, right? And so I definitely recognize that they've done nothing, like literally nothing at tackle to make Spencer Brown feel nice and comfortable over there to claim this job again. And first of all, not kind of getting into can I convince you? I don't know if I can because I recognize
I'm a thick-headed guy.
Well, I recognize that he's got to play better, right? I'm not satisfied with how Spencer Brown has performed at right tackle. I can admit that. I mean, he's been very inconsistent, and I want him to be better. I think there's reasons why, right? I don't have to get into the whole spiel, but he hasn't had a regular offseason since like 2018 or 19, something like that.
I've tried to bring that one up where people have asked about I was expecting to have Aaron Cromer make a bigger difference last year. And the response is he didn't have any time with Aaron Cromer. You don't work on things during the season. You're barely keeping it running during the season. He had none of that developmental time.
None at all.
Aaron Cromer. This is his first offseason with Cromer.
I mean, I talked to Cromer before the Rams game, and he wasn't sure if Spencer was going to be able to go, and he played. So, I mean, he was right up until the kickoff was like, is he going to be able to go or not? And he wound up playing, but, that's a tough ask, right, to go into your second season without an offseason, right, to get yourself ready as a raw player. But here's what I'll say, Aaron. I'm a draft guy at my core. I love traits, right? I love length. I like movement skills. And I get that in waves with Spencer Brown. And so my leash is just longer. That's all it is, right? I want him to be better. And I've said it a million times now, like there's few things more significant for the Bills and their success this season than the development of Spencer Brown at right tackle. It is absolutely huge. He's got to be better. But my leash is longer because I like the package. And if he's going to realize it's his ceiling, everything's there for him, right? I mean, he's got a great offensive line coach. He's got a off season now to get himself ready. Continuity year over year with the scheme. Do it or don't, right? But obviously, there's a concern.
Upgrade at the spot next to him here potentially as well, and at least in size and talent. Here, can I follow up here?
Sure.
While I've got you on, because I agree with the traits, and that you should give those guys longer leashes, and that we should. I agree absolutely in the context of a prospect that not all prospects come into the league at the same starting line, and that we should.
He's the kind of guy that you want to not cut bait on early.
Correct. Yes, there's every reason to still stay invested in this player. My concern is those traits and that athleticism. I don't see result on the field in that. It seems to me he struggles, and maybe this was the back injury. And you can speak on that. Maybe the pad level is a problem. And if you can't be as big as he is, even as athletic as he is, and lose leverage every single time against these elite edge rushers in the league, you're just going to lose. You're going to get pushed back, which is what we see from him happen all the time. You lose leverage. You can't do that unless he can get that down. I don't know if it was the back injury or he just can't get low with that size, but there's almost a point where those traits become a detriment to you.
Well, and he's narrow too, right? So he's not like a dense frame. He's the opposite of Poona Ford. In every imaginable way. Very tall,
or even Torrence with the big anchor.
Or you look at Jonathan Ogden was 6'9", but he was also a mountain of a man.
He doesn't have the width, right? There's that piece of it that's missing, and like not a low center of gravity. So he's got to be able to leverage his hips, and Aaron Cromer's a big stay grounded with your feet and use your hands for leverage. And so, look, I get it, dude. I'm with you.
I'm sorry.
I'm concerned about it, but like, it's. I have enough. Like, there's a big piece of me that's like, man, I know what this guy's capable of physically. Year 3,
there's been flashes.
Yeah, like it's when he first came in week 4 against Houston. I was at that game for his first ever start. Like, I'm like, oh man, this guy's something, right? Like the run blocking was like a big deal. He's getting after people. There's a tenacity. Like people were in on Spencer Brown, and then he didn't take a step. And I think, well, everybody forgot that he didn't have an offseason. He was rehabbing a back injury. And but then why do you play him, right? That leads to more questions. Like I get it. I get all the angles, but man.
Don't give
it all comes together, dude. How meaningful would that be? We need Beane to hit on a pick like that,
huge, Huge.
You do. You're right.
So, and Rick here asking about like where are we at with Tommy Doyle? I think my ceiling for him is that maybe he can be our David Quessenberry. Maybe he can be our swing tackle. I don't know that I've seen anything that tells me that's a future starter in the NFL.
Can he be the jumbo tight end?
I think that's true.
He was the jumbo tight end first. Remember, he got a touchdown pass in the playoffs.
Yeah,
he caught one before Emmanuel Sanders in his 50th season.
I think the setup there right now, if we do see Spencer Brown go forward, I think Ryan Bates becomes a super version of Bobby Hart. He becomes where a guy that can fill in at any spot and is that 250 snap guy that is in for every jumbo set. Anytime somebody needs a breather, anytime somebody misses a game, he's that guy. And somebody in the chat said the NFL needs a 6-man award. He would be the perfect one.
Yeah. And it's about, I mean, look, people may have a hard time reconciling a $4 million a year player to be a reserve, but I had a conversation with he's a high ranking AFC front office guy. And we talked about like, at what point are teams going to start paying a 6 offensive lineman? Like, and realize that that's okay, and you need to. They play, man. I mean, how many times? I mean, there are combinations of teams using every single season. So many. So having a 6 guy that you pay, I'm comfortable with it.
To that point, Joe, doing scouting and talking to guys like Brandon Thorne, like I think we look at these offensive lines and even this conversation about Spencer Brown and look around the league at right tackle, right? We always talk about comparing to your peers. Like it's hard to find 5 good enough, adequate offensive linemen to put a whole unit together that isn't super flawed or has a big weakness. Like there's not a lot of these big, good offensive lineman guys around the league, let alone having a 6th.
Look at the AFC East. Look at the AFC East right tackle position. What the hell's going on with New England? Riley Reif, he couldn't start for the Bears last year. Mm-hmm. What's going on in Miami? Austin Jackson, come together this year. There's bigger questions about him than Spencer Brown.
Every time they bring up Austin Jackson, I'm like, that's a great idea.
How about the Jets? What are we doing there? Is it going to Max Mitchell coming off of his injury? He's not going to be ready. Mekhi Becton, that guy's been really durable. That's just the AFC East. Yeah. And Spencer Brown, the Bills might have the best right tackle in the East.
Oh man,
not crazy.
That might have been a
that
little
might be your best argument.
Like, hopefully there's no like rival fans in here going to clip that, and I'm going to be viral. Maybe that'd be great for all of us if that happens. I don't care.
I'll take it.
I'll mute it
while you're here. Like and subscribe.
Yes, please like. Subscribe. So I will say, everybody that's listening, please press that like button to help us out. You know how the internet works. Go and press that button. It helps us out.
We should get likes just for Greg calling the Poona Ford thing. Come on.
Wow. I will say, I've had some obnoxious hits before on stuff where it's the hitting the dollar amount on a couple contracts and things like that. But like calling it a month and a half ago of the day they were going to sign him, I was pretty proud of that one. I was pretty proud of that one.
Your by the way, your Akeem Butler is not totally dead yet.
I saw that.
It's not dead yet.
If anybody's going to recapture anything, it is the Steelers receiving coach and their structure. So it's not dead yet.
You're alive.
It's right up there with my Josh Rosen takes.
Yeah.
So obviously, despite I love bringing anyone on to talk about Poona Ford, we did obviously bring Joe on because one of the foremost draft experts and best scouts out there for everything that he does in addition to his Bills coverage, knowing that we could think of better to be able to come on and talk about this draft class. So let's dive into the meat of our discussion here and really just open up. What were your thoughts on the class overall? I'll say it was not the path or exact positions that I expected going through there. Now, signing Latavius Murray, signing Poona Ford, seeing some of the other things in hindsight, I'm more, relabeling what we might call the first pick. I can get my head around it. But as it was happening, I won't lie, I was a little like, all right, what is this? How is this working? How was your process as you saw the draft class come together as a whole?
I think I was just surprised because exactly what you said, Greg. It wasn't what I was expecting, but then the more you think about it, like maybe we should have, right? I mean, they met with all these tight ends. They met with them all. They did all the work with all these tight ends. And Brandon Beane came out and said, we're looking for an offensive weapon. It doesn't necessarily have to be a receiver. You're looking for guys that can create mismatches. He was being honest every step of the way. We just didn't believe him. And then, so I just wasn't expecting it. And obviously my priorities were different than Brandon Beane's. But I think ultimately the way that it came together, I find myself quite satisfied, especially the first two picks. And I think there's a big part of me that's happy for all the people that were like, go all in on offense. Josh, we need to help Josh and more protection, better O-line, more weapons. And like it happened. The Bills are one of only 3 teams in the entire NFL that used their first 2 picks on offensive players. That's it. Yeah. And that does not include there's 2 teams, the Panthers and the Titans. One of their first 2 picks was a quarterback, right? So I dismissed them. Falcons, Jags, Bills, only 3 teams in the NFL that picked offense with their first 2 picks.
And I was saying going in, I want 2 things for Josh Allen. I want weapons and time. And if that's what they've been able to give here, that's what I wanted. I
hate to come in and sound like a homer all the time. I talked to Pat Moran about this earlier today. Like, every year we hear GMs talk about they only have 17 guys in the first round or whatever. But then every post draft, it's always, this guy was a first rounder on our board. He was the last first rounder. But I swear to God, I think they were just as surprised as we were from all the information that we have about how this board fell, from the video clips we've seen from the Bill stuff, that they had, and I trust Connor Rogers, who covers the Jets. He's one of my favorite draft guys. He does a great job. Greg Cosell. I turn in every single time he's talking about the Bills. These guys had him as a top 15 guy. I think Brandon Beane was
Danny Kelly.
People that I respect love this prospect, and I think the Bills were taken by surprise, and it actually lined up to where that typical GM coach speak at the end of the draft, where, hey, no, this first round grade that we had, and we only had 13, 14, whatever it was, guys, fell right to us. We had to go up and do it. And so I think they were just as surprised as the rest of us sitting at home, because Joe, when I was doing mocks and doing all this stuff, I didn't have this pick on my radar because I'm listening to people saying this is a top 15 guy, and I didn't pay attention to the top 15. I didn't think anyone was falling out of there.
There's the surprise element, and there's an acceptance too, right? Where I think part of my dismissive nature of the first round tight end was, did they throw the ball enough to Dawson Knox?
Yeah.
Can Ken Dorsey really do this? Is this going to work? And so because of that, I was a little bit dismissive.
Our $13 million one first before we add a second premium.
But that was the problem with any my argument was okay, but yes, you can apply that to tight end, but you can apply that to receiver with the usage of Gabe Davis. You can apply that to running backs position. Like all skill positions you add are relying on Ken Dorsey figure out how to use these guys.
Yeah.
Now do it. Well, I like the messaging, right? Cole Beasley in a tight end's body, big slot, 11.5 personnel. Those are the words I want to hear. That makes me feel good about it, because I think he can be that route runner, that middle of the field defender that I think this offense was missing last year. That will be a benefit to everybody. Josh Allen, Gabe, Steph Diggs, like they're all going to benefit from that skill set if it's used in the way that I think they should.
So I'm going to ask a different direction of that question. You know, every GM says that it was the best guy on their board. It was our last first round grade. I think it's fairly sincere that every team that graded Dalton Kincaid and didn't red flag him from a health standpoint, I would assume pretty universally had him as one of those. Like when teams say, oh, we only had 12 first rounders, we only had 15, we only had 18. I do think it wouldn't shock me if 10 or more teams had him red flagged and just did not have him either graded or off their board or was downgraded because of potential back concerns or concerns. But it seems genuine that he was a first round grade for the teams who had him ranked.
I would agree. And I mean, I think I mocked him to the Chargers and thought about him with the Packers pick, and then certainly not past Dallas.
Yeah. Which obviously makes sense. The little jump they made there to move up ahead of him.
I think they had to. I think Dallas was going to pick him. You listened to, or I don't know if you guys saw the clip that came out of the Cowboys war room where they were deciding between Mozzie Smith and Matthew Bergeron.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the sprint to the podium if Kincaid's in the board for them, right?
Yeah, you're talking a full tier.
And then they turn around and pick Schoonmaker in the second round.
Yeah, so obviously had a
frustrated. They're very frustrated.
You know what that screams? That screams Tampa when they pick Keyshawn Vaughn in the third round after they pooped their pants because all the running backs got drafted.
Yeah,
that's what they did.
So I know we'll have plenty of time this offseason to debate usage and what that looks like with the path of needing to how many touches you're talking about to justify this. What I'm looking for, whether we hit it, the season long totals, I think can be deceiving. We know how they sometimes bring people along. What I need is by playoff time, he's pushed Dawson Knox to tight end 1B and is the fighting for number 2, number 3 targets in the offense by playoff time. Is that he's gotten himself there, which if he hits his upside, I think most people see is within his capacity.
I went pretty aggressive with my take on this, and that again, not week one, right? But like as the season moves along, and certainly in year 2, my expectations for Dalton Kincaid is for him to be the number 2 option in this passing game. And I think there's a very clear path for that to happen. I keep going back to the 2021 target share, and Diggs around 150 targets, Kincaid around 100. Gabe around 70, 75. And then there's still there's still 70 targets there for Knox. There's still 50 for Shakir. There's still 50 for Cook. I mean, you can spread the ball around, but this is a first and a fourth round pick invested in this player. Yeah. And I as soon as the pick was made, my tone was they better use him. They better use him. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, no, it's not that they better use him. He better be the number 2 option in this passing game. It's a first and a fourth. That's what they gave up for Diggs.
But you're saying from the podcast, when I was listening to that, you're saying over the course of the next couple of years here.
Yeah, like, no.
You're not saying come in immediately.
No, I mean, he's got to be a factor early, but like, not funneling the passing game through him. But like Greg said, kind of as the playoffs get closer and closer, you see it, right? You see that this is all coming together. And then year 2, this is the guy that should be getting 100 targets in this offense. I don't want one of these tight ends that, is 40 catch guy. Like you don't draft him where you drafted him for 40 catches and blocking on 35% of plays. This has got to be a big feature part of your offense. And it excites me because if they do it, I see what he can mean for Josh and the other weapons and the offensive spacing and leaning into more people. Like I love the vision. Just got to see it come together.
And that's where go ahead, Greg.
The one good part he's going to have that it will it is the way it is what it is. It will influence fans is one of the areas he has the easiest path from the beginning. Awesome hands, great leverage in zone, great at finding space. he's going to be an impact in the red zone right off the bat. And if all of a sudden he has, maybe it is because of the way they ease him in, maybe it is 48 catches, but if he hits 9 or 10 touchdowns or something like that, all of a sudden, oh my God, what an awesome pick. This is amazing. And makes a big play in a playoff game or something like that. Everybody will be happy. I think that's one thing that could influence it. I think his best path to the earliest impact will be in the red zone, which will get him a lot of fanfare.
I think that he's going to have a bunch of chances to get on the field here. For me, Joe, and having you on is the most interesting thing is I don't think the Bills, both Brandon Beane and the coaching staffs here, get enough credit for being a little bit trend setting in terms of the directions that the NFL are going over the last few years. Their usage, my sign behind me here is I love slots, and that's on both sides of the ball. Nickel defenders, slot receivers. I think their usage in those spots in the middle of the field have been top of the league in terms of trending in the right direction. And now you're seeing teams playing catch up to them. Second and third round, every time Daniel Jeremiah got up to talk about a cornerback, it was, this guy's a nickel hybrid corner, chess piece. You can move around. The league is just filling up with these guys to play smaller. And I think the Bills are counterpunching that and saying, all right, the league's going smaller. Everyone wants to go nickel. And we know the deficiencies of playing nickel better than anybody because we've been doing it way ahead of anybody. Here's how you beat that is we're going to counterpunch you going big. I love this overall philosophy. So for me, bringing him in doesn't even necessarily need to line up on the box score. It's the overall philosophy. And we're seeing it with getting bigger with Harris and Murray and trying to get more physical with Torrence and becoming a bit of a bully on the offensive side of the ball. I think it all plays together where just him being that presence being on the field forces some of these teams that are trying to get smaller to play, to make a decision. Are you going to play physical with Kincaid up the seam and then in the middle of the field? I think that just benefit alone, whether the ball goes his way or not, their ability to dictate is going to pay dividends for everybody else around.
So as we pivot here, looking at the next pick with O'Cyrus Torrence, I know it was a guy that we struggled, and I think, Joe, you were in the same boat early on of like the player, like the skill set and the power, not sure if he's a fit for the Bills. And when you see a pick like that, part of it, I think, is, what are you going to do? It's pick 59 and you got a guy who's a late first round grade or a top, 30, top 40 player for just about everybody. I think consensus board, he was 27th, something like that. How much of it do you think it was too good a value to pass up, or how much of it is, hey, maybe there is a little more interest now, 12 personnel, add in a back like Latavius Murray? Is this maybe an indication of something they're more interested in trying to have a piece like him on the offensive line?
I mocked O'Cyrus Torrence to the Buffalo Bills on November 30th in the first round. And I thought he was everything they needed at guard. And then I talked myself out of it. I just was like, you know what? Every trend that this team's had over the last couple of years, offensive line-wise, has been moving away from these types of players. And I'm not lumping him with John Feliciano or Cody Ford or Darrell Williams, but those are bigger guys that aren't as athletic, that are more power-based players. And as they said goodbye to those players and leaned into Spencer Brown and Ryan Bates, and they signed Connor McGovern, every indication was that they wanted these plus athletes for the offensive line. And so I said, you know what? I can drive this train to nowhere because I don't think they're going to be after this guy, or I can, back off because I don't think that he's going to be part of the mix. And I backed off, and I shouldn't have because they picked him. And it, to me, it leans into what Aaron was talking about is, well, I think the Bills have been trend setting in a lot of ways, but they've also proven to be adaptable. And I think we're going to see that a lot on defense and offense this year. And that, hey, that was a good idea. I think they really wanted to be this wide zone rushing offense. And every time they kept really wanting to be a wide zone rushing offense, just wasn't as effective. And they realized that their best stuff usually comes when they run gap or more inside zone. And I think that coming to grips with that and embracing it is further emphasized by the drafting of O'Cyrus Torrence, who I think is going to thrive in those areas. And so more big people is good, especially with where some of the league is heading, and whether it's Dalton Kincaid as a bigger slot, and he'll be a benefit to the offensive line by being kind of tight, some of the tighter alignments and maybe widening some angles from some of the rush players, but also having a player like O'Cyrus Torrence you're getting more big people on the field to help create displacement and be more powerful and be able to maybe dictate terms a little bit more. So I like the pick. I just wish I didn't talk myself out of it back in November.
Could have been way ahead of the game. Help me. Tell me his feet are better than those other guys you rattled off.
Oh God. Yeah. One of my favorite things about Osiris is that for a bigger guy, he plays with really good bend and leverage, right?
Excellent.
Like, and he doesn't fold at the waist a ton. You see some of these bigger guys.
Poona Ford's concrete boots.
They chase blocks, right? They fold in half. And their feet don't stay engaged. You don't see that with Osiris. If you get to his edges and you're a twitchy interior rusher, that's going to give him some trouble, right? But nobody's going to go through him, and he's going to create a lot of displacement in the run game.
I love Justin Shorter's comment about the typewriter feet. I at least like.
I thought that was aggressive. I'll be honest with you. I thought Justin was a little aggressive.
Trying to help his friend out. Right.
I've been known to talk myself up a little bit every once in a while too.
Laramie Tunsil has typewriter feet. Okay, that's not Osiris Torrence.
Yeah. Moving on here throughout this draft process, the most confusing one of the night to me, still trying to wrap my head around, even though I think if people haven't had a chance to listen to Chris Long's podcast where Brandon Beane sort of talked about and addressed middle linebacker and where they're at, the pick of Dorian Williams, where were you at? The type, the size, although again, similar to Poona Ford in that like a very odd torso, like somebody else's torso was placed on this guy's body with that wingspan. But where were you at on draft night and after some of the comments that have come out and maybe seeing the signing of Ford? Has that everything since the draft changed where you're at with that pick?
I almost just wish they picked somebody else. Like I think Brandon Beane coming out and saying that they're going to start him at outside linebacker and like, well, you only played 2 and Matt Milano's your outside linebacker. You just extended him. What's the path? I wish that they just wouldn't have picked him. You know what I mean? Like
you think
just lean into Terrell Bernard. Honestly, with the new vision like that, Beane's come out and articulated the signings that have went with it, right? With Poona Ford, like, you know what this defense wants to be. Like, just roll with Terrell Bernard. That would have been fine with me. I feel like you just like doubled down, and it felt super unnecessary to me, especially like they drafted Matt Milano's backup in a special teamer with pick 91. I don't know. I want more.
Do you think? I wonder is it an acknowledgement about Bernard that they thought they needed that second investment from a competitor standpoint, from a competition standpoint? Because I know some of the things have been walked back a little bit. His comments the next day after the draft were about, well, we don't want to put too much on his plate. McDermott tells him he wants him to learn the mic as well. And that I'm wondering, like, is there a chance that we see kind of a Christian Benford effect in that, hey, if he comes out there and this is a pretty open competition and your levels, and I use Benford where your level of competition was the Cam Lewis's and even Dane Jacksons of the world, which is akin to a Terrell Dodson and a AJ Klein and people like that. You're not talking about having to beat out, it's Milano beating out Ramon Humber. Is there a chance that Dorian Williams actually leapfrogs Terrell Bernard?
Maybe. But I mean, if they got to give him a chance to, right? And like, are we backtracking from those original comments? Like maybe, because the first thing he said is he's going to start at outside linebacker, and I can't get it out of my head.
I can't either, Joe, and that it stuck with me immediately, and I was frustrated because of the pick after that. And I don't know if he presented that in the way that he wishes he did, in the moment a little bit. But part of me wonders, and I'll throw it to both of you guys here, is some of the way they're talking about this to lower expectations and manage expectations, because that's a big role to fill. Regardless of how you felt about Tremaine Edmonds, whoever, this is a big story coming out of Bills camp. There's going to be a lot of attention on this, and just saying like, hey, we'll see how it goes. And, if he can pick it up, then maybe we'll just keeping those expectations instead of saying, hey, yeah, we drafted this guy with the idea that this is our new idea at the linebacker position. He's what we envisioned for this role. I think that might be too much pressure for a third rounder versus taking this approach. But I do think that initial statement, the optics on that initial statement felt like, man, if there's no path to the field unless it's Milano getting hurt.
Yeah. And also, probably something I should have thought about more than just in this moment is, well, Tyrell Dodson's on a 1-year deal. AJ Klein's on a 1-year deal. Like
Matakevich 1-year deal in a special teamer.
Right. So now you've got 2 cost control players. You hope you get 1 starter.
Yeah.
And you do need a backup to Matt Milano, right? Like, I'm not trying to make light of that. Like, you need that. And he's a very important matchup specific player. And so like having a reserve that's capable there, like that you need it. So there's some long-term right here. I think in my mind, it's like, well, they needed a Mike linebacker. They didn't do it. They got this guy, but there's still a path and there's still a way for him to be meaningful. It's just like detaching yourself from your priors, thinking about Tremaine, what he does, what these guys do. Like, are they really going to be different? And I think, with what Beane said on Chris Long's podcast, I mean, they're going to be different. They have to be different. That's something I've been saying all along, is like, no matter who replaces Tremaine Edmonds, they have to play it differently.
The comment here from Bills Are Electric, I think, is the one that sticks with me, because I wasn't happy in the moment. Obviously, we got really close to having Trenton Simpson fall in our lap, and I think when you saw that run of linebackers from Simpson through, all of a sudden, whether you wanted Overshown or whether you wanted Henley or any of the other guys, that group that was sitting there for a little bit, like, oh my God, are we gonna have Dalton Kincaid fall, and then Osiris Torrence fall, and then a linebacker also fall, and have it go boom, 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 and be like, oh, we still went with the guy that, I guess I would have been cool with in the fifth. Now you're talking about, even if it does turn out that they were managing expectations, and Williams does have a bit of that play with your hair on fire mentality, that maybe he does, get their attention in camp and earn it. All that pivots to is, so now the Bernard pick was lit on fire instead of this year third round. Like, if one of them wins it, we actually probably should be okay with it.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a starting linebacker out of a third round pick. It's just frustrating that, well, why didn't we know which one, and why didn't we use the other pick for something else?
I don't think the Bernard pick was picked with the intention that Tremaine Edmonds was going to get the contract he got in Chicago. I think the plan was to
move
bring
on from Milano, and then all of a sudden Milano went up another level, and it made it,
it was a problem. That's a good problem to have.
Right.
And to Joe's point, though, now I do think the versatility of the way you've selected these picks, and that maybe the idea of linebackers that mirror each other's responsibilities for matchups, I think gives you more flexibility versus Tremaine is a big hole to fill, because there's no other Tremaine Edmonds. Like, even if like when he got hurt, you're not filling that hole. It's not a sustainable type to have in the middle of your defense.
Well, certainly for those comments that Beane made, they're wanting to embrace the shortcomings of Tremaine Edmonds and not have those, right? With change of direction. He's 6'5", right? That's not a big strength of his. Obviously, he's great in zone coverage, but man matchup type stuff might not be a strength. Like, okay, well, we don't get Tremaine Edmonds. Let's get the things that he didn't offer and try to work with that. So I can appreciate the pivot and the way that they're attacking it.
So now let's talk about the Bills drafting DK Metcalf in the
Josh Gordon,
5th round.
Even.
Josh Gordon. So help the fans understand, how did we go from number one receiver in his recruiting class,
Chase,
top overall, the 5-star, top 10 overall player, any position in his draft class, some places top 5, to switching schools twice when he's this is not an off-field problem guy. He's an honor student. He was academic All-American. He was, is already partway through his graduate degree. Incredibly eloquent, well-spoken young man. Looks like he does. We posted the ridiculous picture of him flexing. How do you have all those boxes and you have good hands? How does the production not match any
special
of that
teams
potential?
Guy, like, does all the right things? Yeah.
I'm so how does it look so good in so many areas and it's so hollow in some of the middle?
Might be more about the teams he was on, right? I mean, I know there's been some good receivers. There's been some crappy quarterbacks. I mean, like, I know Anthony Richardson was the number 4 pick, but it's not because he was like a high volume,
48% completion percentage,
right? I mean, like, it wasn't like he was a great college quarterback, right? They're betting on traits there. So yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty normal, right? Like, we see big time high school recruits not really.
Keyshawn Booty.
Yeah, it happens, right? And Justin Shorter's like that. I think what makes it challenging with Shorter is the things that you said is, like, you can't really point to like a work ethic issues or like.
Yes, you expect it to be off field.
Right.
You expect it to be bad hands. You expect it to be got kicked out of school because he was failing classes. Yeah. It's a really smart kid who's got awesome hands. Like, I don't get it.
Do you think there's a bit of an underlying problem in the college system being the farm system for the NFL, in that it's such a different game that, like, a guy that maybe is a more pro ready type receiver just falls by the wayside in some of these college offenses, and the way that some of these quarterback play is, the devaluing of the quarterback play throughout college football. It's a lot more flag football in college football than it is at the pro level. Do you think it's a disservice to players getting ready to make that jump and to present themselves as NFL prospects sometimes?
I think there's just so much turnover in college football, coaching staffs, and now it's just not just coaching staffs and guys always moving to different places trying to level up their careers, but also you have these players transferring like crazy now, right? So there's just, that's going to be bad for development, right? You need continuity year over year. Like, how do we grow together? Like, you know me, you know what you were intimately involved with me last year, and how do we expand out that next year, right? Like, there's guys like looking at Derek Brown or Derek Hall, the edge from Auburn. The guy had 4 defensive line coaches in 4 years and like 4 different techniques, 4 different ways that they want it done. Like, he's 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Like, those are formative years of you being a football player. And it's hard to really become the best version of yourself when you're continuously asked to do different things. And so I think you can apply a lot of that to Justin Shorter. And I'm not sitting here telling you that he's going to become like this great NFL player, but I mean, I think that helps you wrap your head around why maybe he never really fulfilled that promise in college.
Yeah. Real quick, Dom's great. A good follow on Twitter and part of some of the mock drafts that we've done. I'd love to tell you, because you're a Jets fan, that we actually have an awesome answer and we have no fears at tackle. If you go back to the beginning of the show, we actually talked about how that's our biggest concern on the offense is Spencer Brown at right tackle. So we actually did address that earlier. We appreciate you, Dom. I would love to. I'll pretend that
I could talk about it more, but no.
But yeah, we did talk about that, and it is actually a pretty big concern. So we're glad
we will also address it. We will have more episodes about this topic.
Yeah, we'll do our position preview, and we'll go into it in depth.
Yeah.
So real quick, I also love nothing more than if I am Adam Henry. If I'm Adam Henry, I walk up to Justin Shorter and I say, "Hey, you see that guy over there who's 4.5 inches shorter than you and 30 pounds lighter than you, but has never even had to be on a practice squad once? Go follow around Trent Sherfield and do everything that he does. Do everything that he does, because you're bigger and stronger and faster, and he's figured out a way to stick on every single roster he's been on, killing it on special teams, taking advantage of every opportunity he's had when he got on the field. If you do what he does with your skill set and potential and traits, God bless you. Go do everything that guy does."
Some great mentors in the room. I mean, obviously Steph Diggs, known for his work ethic, but I mean, even Gabe, right? I mean, how many times do we hear nobody outworks Gabe? I've heard Brandon Beane say that 74 times this offseason, right? So yeah, there's some great people for him to get in his hip pocket and, you know, develop. And I think at worst case scenario with Justin Shorter, I think you have your Jake Kummerow replacement, and that's fine, absolutely. Right? In the 5th round, that's fine. A blocker, sometimes vertical threat.
Folks mad about losing Hodgins. Like, this is that better, right? Because now he can hang on the roster for the special teams alone.
Because he can actually we lost Hodgins because he couldn't do that.
Exactly. He gets the jersey for it.
He couldn't get on. He couldn't get onto the roster because he couldn't play special teams. They knew he could play receiver. They thought they could hide him because he couldn't play special teams.
Well, in the Bills are going to roster 6 receivers. That's kind of been their magic number. And so before Justin Shorter was part of the team, you're looking at one of Isaiah Coulter, Keyshawn Johnson, Desmond Patton, or like in line to make the roster. Like, you needed another body here. And I think that there's a lot more that Shorter can bring to the table than any of those players.
I agree.
So the last couple here, I love that they were honest with themselves. I know a lot of people, I think it almost became cliche and it's a bad draft. Bad is relative. It didn't have the top end that other drafts have. It didn't have the Myles Garrett, Bosa level pass rusher. It didn't have the top 5, top 10 receiver, flashy receiver. It didn't have some of those high end things. It seemed to have a nice middle chunk of depth. And then it seemed like it might have dropped off a little bit towards the end. I love the idea that Beane, and was pretty honest that he needs to, save him from himself, that he needs more ammo for when he'll inevitably trade up again.
Don't trade up.
He's done
not
it like
picking 10 players next year, boys.
Like 5 out of 6 drafs.
Yeah.
He might get a vet. He might not even be able to contain themselves from a vet here.
Well, don't worry. At cut down day, he'll get back 2 more of those picks anyway. So, so on the live show, Anthony Prohaska and I went live right afterwards, and our immediate reaction, my pitch was, and he and I were watching the draft in the room beforehand, saying, if I'm a Bills assistant GM, scouting director, I'm lobbying, hey, what are the positions we're the most stacked at that no good UDFA is going to want to sign with us? Let's pick those, because we can convince a UDFA running back to come sign here because there's an open spot. We can convince a UDFA tackle because you could maybe make a spot. What are the spots we have no chance of convincing somebody? Oh, we already have 7 guards. Why don't we, if we need one of those, bring in that guy? Oh, we already have a stacked, ridiculous cornerback room. Let's grab one of those. We're not going to get them to come in via UDFA, so just pick them now. So I'll open up. One, is that crazy? And two, do you see a path to the roster for Nick Broeker from Ole Miss and Austin Alex from Oregon State?
No, I think that's very smart and something I hadn't thought about, because I found it interesting that Beane said we needed numbers at corner, and so we drafted Alex Austin. And I'm like, did you need another guy there? But that makes a lot of sense what you said there, Greg.
From a camp standpoint, they did.
Right.
From a roster standpoint, they didn't.
Right. I think the path for Nick Broeker to make the roster is performing at a level that inspires Brandon Beane to be willing to trade one of his backups, right? And we've seen him do it. Marshall Newhouse. Yeah, it happens. Those guys, right? And O-line depth is always needed, especially late in camp. So if you could the guys can stay healthy, and Broker's like good enough where they can say, yeah, I think we can move on from one of these guys and get a 6. That's kind of his path. Of course, injuries, right? I think he's one injury away from one of the 10 in front of him to being one of them. So that's certainly a possibility. And same exact thing with Alex Austin, where you probably need help. You need an injury to make the roster. But, if at a worst case scenario, can you get on the practice squad? You're kind of a scheme specific player. Not every team's going to want you. And can you, like, my thought for Alex Austin is, can you be the next Dane Jackson? And if that's true, that's a hell of a 7th round pick.
Even Cam Lewis, a guy that has come in, played some legitimate reps, stuck around the roster for a little while now. And now I will say, Cam Lewis also got that like weird middle ground guaranteed money where it's kind of like, hey, we don't think you're going to make the roster again, but here's enough money that you won't run away when we put you on the practice squad.
Nobody's plucking away Cam Lewis. They've had ample opportunities to do it. I mean, I don't want to get too comfortable because he's nice to have in your back pocket, but nobody's
same idea as when did Houston give Brandon Bryant a cup of coffee there for a minute afterwards?
Something like New Orleans or something. Then he came back real quick. I think it was Houston. Yeah.
But it was, I was like, you want to know what? God bless him, because he probably deserves to be better than our 6th defensive tackle. He's probably like an NFL roster caliber guy, but I kind of liked having Eli Ankow and Brandon Bryant and Duke Johnson and Cam Lewis. And like, I'm going to be on this campaign all offseason. If AJ Klein doesn't win the outright starting middle linebacker position, he's going to be Duke Johnson. He's going to be our reasonably well-paid practice squad, great glass in case of emergency guy.
Beane said, like, when he was talking about the candidates for the Mike linebacker spot, he didn't include AJ Klein. And I think there was a follow-up there, and he said, look, he's an asset for the room. He's got like 8 years of experience with Sean McDermott. Like, that's a big benefit to
his only value is in Buffalo. He could get cut
sideline
today. Nobody's beating down the door to bring in AJ.
He got his one last shot with Chicago last year.
He was on He was on like 3 teams last year. Was he on Baltimore too? And
yes, maybe for a minute. Yeah.
No, his value's right here in Buffalo in this room for whatever services they need.
Yeah.
Heck of a career for a 5th round pick. I mean, he's going in like his 12th season.
God bless him.
Made some money too.
Fantastic. So, Joe, we kind of circumvented a little bit, talked about the, not bringing in a tackle. Were there any other positions you were surprised we didn't address? Or I guess the other one would have been defensive tackle now with Poona Ford, but
yeah, I think that the 2 signings after the draft really answered my question, running back and defensive tackle, because the Bills didn't even have a practice squad running back, right? Yeah. I mean, you had 3. That was it. The Cook, Harrison, and Hines. And so you knew that there was probably a rostered player that needed to be added at running back. Murray is going to be the answer there. And same thing at defensive tackle. Maybe edge, Greg and Aaron. I mean,
Still time.
That's
There's
where
still
Justin
time.
Houston goes nowhere.
Dude,
That's where Justin Houston stands. He has like a carved out spot on the.
Whoever, one of those guys, Leonard Floyd, Yannick Ngakoue,
One of these
Melvin Ingram.
hire a mercenary.
There's so many
Just get
mercenary
one of them.
defensive ends. There's so many.
Hits quarterbacks for a living.
Oh,
I'll trade not drafting a defensive end if I get one of those guys.
Oh yeah,
that'll make me real happy, especially because I mean Von's probably going to start the year on the pup. I know, but nobody wants to. No, that's not going to happen.
I'm telling people to pump the brakes on whatever they think Von Miller's return is. I would expect it to be longer than you think.
They need Von for the playoffs, man. And so, like, get a player now that takes the pressure off everybody. Yeah. Get Von right, but then also that player is going to be a benefit to you down the stretch because you're going to have more depth.
Correct. So I love the idea of, we know Gregory Rousseau is going to be in good shape. I could see another small step forward from him in his third season. I'm fine with an early rotation of a Shaq Lawson and AJ Epinesa. Mm-hmm. I'm done with Boogie Basham, but whatever. I pray that he's one of the pre-cut down day trade candidates. But otherwise, having I'll keep saying Justin Houston, but whoever it is off that list, there's literally like 8 guys that would be a really nice fit. Mm-hmm. But in a Justin Houston, you have that guy early who is more of the, hey, you can kick Gru in and put him next to Ed Oliver and have AJ Epinesa and Justin Houston coming off the edge early in the season. That will work. And then later, when you kick Gru in and you're talking about having Von Miller on one side and Justin Houston on the other side, now you're talking about some finishing power. And I know Eric went through specifically the names we've listed off, and like, listen, I know some of these guys have a big number with a 3 in front of it, in front of some of their names. They're not young guys, but there's juice left in the tank. There's gas in the tank here that these guys can still get to the quarterback. And that one more piece there, I think, would be really good. And honestly, the way the musical chairs works, I almost think there's too many guys left that, like, is one going to go to Baltimore? Yes. Is one going to go to Kansas City? Yes. Is one going to go to Cincinnati? Yes. Is one going to go to Philadelphia? Yes.
Miami will probably get one back.
And Miami and San Francisco and Dallas. But there's like 11. Like, I almost think it's impossible that one of them doesn't see what we're talking about, that there's an obvious, clear opportunity, and that, it's probably going to be a little less money than they want, but Justin Houston's made $2 million to $3.5 million the last 2 years. We can do that. We can make that work.
We should have never let Jerry Hughes leave this building.
That's a whole separate.
He's still got juice too. He's still got juice too. Joe, real quick here. I know we're gonna get out of here in a second. This is the most important stuff I gotta talk to you about tonight. One, I've seen you on the gram looking good. I like the CrossFit. You're looking good. I like it. Yeah. Is it resulting in gains in the golf game? How is the golf game now that you've exited draft season? You finally got some time to think about this. What's going on with the golf game down south?
I am fully addicted to CrossFit. It's
good for you.
You're looking good, man.
You look my favorite hour of the day, dude. Appreciate that, man. It's been incredible. And so I haven't swung a golf club since I was in Buffalo playing at Deerwood in July. I have not swung a golf club since then.
I bet all those gains you're getting from CrossFit would help the game.
You think so?
I think you'll notice a difference. Go back and start swinging some clubs, man. I'm telling you.
I want to get out there. But it's like, I don't know. I haven't
Lots
yet.
to do.
Yeah. And not, I mean, this is the first, like, I haven't even.
You don't have anything to do. It's not like you do a daily podcast or anything.
two daily podcasts to go to the gym, hang out with my wife and daughter. There's not a lot going on.
Nothing going on for you.
Play with my dogs. You know what I mean? I got time. I still haven't recovered from the draft. Yeah. I mean, have you guys, like, the thing, I'm a very routine person and I'm like totally out of football mode right now in terms of like the staying up late for primetime games. I'm asleep like by now. Like I usually go to sleep.
We're already past your bedtime.
No, but it works out because I'm still all kinds of effed up from last week where I was awake till 3 a.m. 3 nights in a row. Yeah. I have not recovered from this. So maybe golf will be in my future like next week or something like that. But
awesome.
Last summer I played so much golf and I literally have not played since I got back from camp last year.
Well, we're happy for you. We're glad you're healthier. This is an awesome addiction to have. Good for you that's going well. For anyone here who is not already familiar with the fantastic work that we're referring to, you can tell Aaron and I are both constant listeners. It's one of my favorite shows. Joe is the host of Locked On Bills, which is an awesome show. Obviously, one you should check out. He is an author, which you see over my shoulder here. He also hosts a fantastic show with Kyle Krabs, the Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, which gives a much more league-wide view, talking about roster construction, how they build things, and their focus on the draft. So all kinds of fun things there. Make sure you're checking it out. You see it in the show description for our build here. Joe, any final things for the people?
Nah, it's been fun being on with you guys. Thanks for all the kind words. Thanks for naming the book. Yeah, I don't know if people know this, but Greg didn't even know he named the book, but he named the book. I was like, hey man, what words really resonate with Bills? You know, like go Bills. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool name for a book. So always in debt for you for doing that.
It's our aloha. It's in Hawaii
Right.
that works for hello, goodbye, I love you, see you later, everything. That's our thing. That's our thing. It translates.
Hey Q, I'm loving the drawings behind you. That's Flickshires, right? I have one of the I gotta hang it up. This TV behind me is not even plugged in, right? That's completely pointless. So we got some things going in there, and one of them is a Flickshires. It's the torch, right? It's the color picture of Josh Allen. It's leaning up against my wall over here. I hate that about it, but big fan of
great
of
work.
there, man.
This Andre Reed one over here is signed. My brother-in-law, Patriots fan, got it for me. Really nice one. Really nice gift. So
Love
you.
that.
At least there's something good about them.
That's it.
All right, guys. Aaron, anything else for the people before we close things out?
No, man, I'm looking forward to, we did a lot of work for the draft. Looking forward to sort of pulling back and breaking down this full roster. I think this roster breakdown that we're coming up on doing here is going to be the best we've done yet. Like, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's deeper than it's been. So I'm really looking forward to going, through this whole thing and really getting ready for summer. Are we going camping again, Greg? We might go camping again.
Darn right. We're going to get another Airbnb, go stay there, live up at camp for a little while. It's gonna be
when you going?
We got to see when the dates come.
We can share that when that comes.
Let's all go camping.
But we appreciate it. Fantastic producer Chris Kepner helping us behind the scenes. The chat was awesome tonight. Again, you guys know how the internet works. We need you to help us out on your way out. Press the like button. It goes a long ways. That's how you let other people know. That's how the algorithm knows you enjoyed the show tonight. So if you enjoyed Joe's fantastic input on the show tonight, please press that like button. But on behalf of Joe Marino and Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are